Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Overpopulation, hoax, empty towns thread. I can't shake this feeling that something is seriously off about the world population numbers and about how empty our world actually is. Are we being lied to on this? Every other day I feel like I hear about overpopulation and how it's a big issue due to not being able to feed people, climate issues, etc. But then you start looking, and reality is totally different from what we're told. I live in Southern Europe and most urban areas feel empty. Buildings that seem more like props than places where people actually live. I've started to notice how you barely see any activity outside a few population centers that are scattered around. I swear, half the houses in my neighborhood might as well be cardboard cutouts for all the activity I see around them. And if I go a bit further away from the main cities and population centers, it's over. There's this pervasive emptiness everywhere, and it's just countryside for kilometers and kilometers. In my country, you can go hours without seeing anyone, if you just drive even 20 to 30 minutes in areas away from the big cities. This past summer, I passed by little towns in the countryside, and you see like one or two older folk, and that's it. Besides main Western cities, India and China, the world feels desolate and empty. There's so much good empty terrain. Not being able to feed people is bullshit. Climate change is bullshit.
Everyone has become a shut-in neat feeding on ready-made slop sent by Amazon robots.
Same here in Eastern Europe. A handful of main cities are chock full of people. And even then, it's a handful of extremely busy streets and areas. Many side streets are devoid of life. I specifically know about 10 25-story commie blocks in the middle of the damn city that are cardboard props. They're literally empty shells made to look like apartment buildings. Don't even get me started on the countryside. We have houses crumbling down, and entire fields as far as the eye can see with nothing on them. Ghost towns are prevalent too. Even my dad said the world is far emptier than when he was young.
Depopulation is in full swing. The official numbers of excess mortality are BS. The real numbers are massive. It's the first time in the history of humankind that the general number of humans on Earth goes down, and rapidly, and everyone knows why. Of course, the Earth has no problem with overpopulation. It wouldn't matter if it's 10 or 100 billion people, but the elites want it down to 500 million because most people are useless in their view.
Nah, people will just start dying en masse from lack of food, lack of water. Infinite growth in a finite space is impossible, you absolute child. Can you fit 8 billion people on a sailboat?
Yeah, mainly because green politics is destroying food production and energy supplies, on purpose, worldwide. You're such a dumb sheep that you can't even think about the size of the world and how easily it could feed all humans if the elites would let a sane economy evolve. No, you swallow all the BS propaganda from the news and believe it and kiss the boots of your globalist masters who see you as just useless animals. That level of stupid is amazing. We currently produce so much food we can easily feed 10 billion people. Food is just being wasted and not properly distributed. You eat too much. Soil erosion can be greatly slowed down by no-till farming, windbreaks, terracing, and proper education and management, which developing countries are lacking. Eating less meat will greatly reduce the damage we're making to the soil, emissions of greenhouse gases, and the amount of resources we use. It'll also improve people's health. Nitrogen fertilizers are nearly infinite since we get it from the atmosphere. Phosphate can last us for 260 years, and potash for at least 90 years. If you think we won't find any new resources or substitutes for these in that time, you're pretty stupid. War, famine, and poverty occurred frequently throughout the entire history of humanity, regardless of how much people were on Earth. If you study the subject thoroughly, you'll realize all of these problems are caused by mismanagement, not too many people. If there is no infrastructure, which is the main cause of hunger, then the help won't arrive there at all, regardless of how much people in need are there. Intensive farming reduces the area we need to grow crops. That's why in the last 120 years forest cover in Europe increased from 20 to 30%, while the agricultural land decreased. Underdeveloped countries are cutting down forests and destroying animal habitats because they lack the means necessary for intensive farming and therefore farm extensively. The problem isn't people. It's the elites that don't know or don't want to manage the resources. You're a sheep if you think otherwise.
The eating less meat claim is bullshit. Cattle and chickens, etc., can be raised on marginal land and fertilize the soil.
This is why we should increase herd and flock sizes and rotate them through crop fields, even encouraging ranchers and farmers to work together by loaning them out to farmers who don't keep livestock. Easy peasy fertilizer while fields are fallow.
Sorry, you gotta start eating the bugs to save the planet now. Too large of a population for meat. Only for us. Rich eat meat. Eat the bug. It's tasty.
If people had any idea how much food is wasted, how inefficient food production is, the overproduction of some places could easily feed and sneed starving countries with ease.
Some countries that are poorer are still better off than the West when it comes to food. Not like starving countries, but what is probably second world or something. Like in Thailand, you could still get a huge bowl of pho for a $1. If you don't know what pho is, it's like the Thai and Viet equivalent to a meaty homemade ramen bowl. That would be like $15 or so in a Thai restaurant in the US, maybe more. Same with many other areas written off as much worse off than the West. You could get an actual dinner that fills you up for nothing.
Exactly. In Brazil, I can buy lunch with at least 800 grams of food. Rice, beans, noodles, meat, and salad, for what equals to $2. For us, it's approximately 1/6 of the minimum wage for the day, but it's enough to feed 2 people for lunch, and still there's food left.
You're paying more out of the minimum wage for lunch than we do in the UK. Say minimum wage is £10, I've rounded down, and a workday is 7 hours, common. That's £70. A £7 lunch would be expensive, which is 1/10 of a day's pay.
I know, but the thing is basically everyone here makes more than minimum wage. I work at a government-funded employment agency, and there isn't a single job here that pays less than 20% more than the minimum wage. And that's beside the 30-day paid vacation time guaranteed by law, a bonus wage at the end of the year, and other benefits.
Enjoy paying $1,200 for your PS5.
Some people don't care about the Sony pony as much as you might. Also, yeah, the world seems empty, but there are always people online playing video games, even in old video games. A few years ago, I played an old Windows 3.1 game that had network capabilities. There were still a few people in that world playing with me. Even old ladies still play The Sims online. Either everyone is a bot, or we really do have a ton of people on Earth.
Cope.
I live in what appears to be a well-populated village. There are 3,000 residents, yet at most I see the same 200 people max. And that's being generous. It's usually around the same 50 or so people on rotation. If there's really 3,000 people living there, why do I never see the vast majority of them?
The numbers are correct, and the state of overpopulation is also correct. But this refers to average human settlement globally, and much of it is concentrated in urban areas. Human civilization is currently centered around cities. While there is enough land space to go around, resources to support our cities are becoming more limited by the day. This is what overpopulation alludes to. The current system is being overloaded, and that's because only a minority of us can live in spaces outside of human cities.
Honestly, this is more of a political issue and not paranormal. The thing is, we weren't meant to live in such cramped cities. Maybe when automation takes off, we can return to live rural.
It is paranormal in the sense that there is absolutely nothing natural in city lifestyle. We are being herded. We are raised and grown like what we do with cattle. We are harvested of our essence by way of debt slavery. It's the most paranormal thing that's right in front of our faces.
Sure, it severs our connection with the spiritual. That's why rural places and small towns are much more religious. In a way, Amish aren't wrong. Maybe we are the crazy ones.
We, as a planet, are not even close to being overpopulated. I'll put this in perspective for you. Most population-dense country, or country, depending on how you want to classify Macau because it's a special administrative region. Macau. Population, 672,800. Area of Macau, 44.5 square miles, of which 32.7 square miles is water. Population density of Macau, land area, 57,504 square miles. Random place, Texas, USA. Area of Texas, USA, 268,596 square miles, of which 261,232 square miles is land area. World population, 7,951,000,000. Population density. If the entirety of the world relocated to Texas, 30,436 square miles. In other words, the whole entire population of the planet could move to Texas, USA, and it wouldn't be as densely populated, in fact, almost only half as densely populated, as a country, or country, which it really is because it's a special administrative region rather than a country. That's 60 times smaller than Rhode Island. Keeping in mind that Texas, USA is a state in a country that makes up a part of the North American continent, then keep in mind that North America is the third largest continent behind Asia and Africa. So the TLDR is that we, the planet, aren't actually close to overpopulated. We're overpopulated in the sense that you need to feed 100 people but only have enough food for 50. The sensible option would be wean off the persons who are resource thieves, those who offer nothing to the human race going forward and who never will, those who only know how to take and rely on handouts to survive.
Doesn't like 1/3 of all food every year get wasted? Yeah, I don't buy the resources are scarce BS, they're just not used, right?
Yes, food waste is pretty huge. The percentage varies, but it can go much higher than that. Even during the plague supply chain disruption, literal mountains of food were being destroyed. But food waste and destruction is routine. It's by far the worst in industrial farms. Subsistence agriculture isn't nearly as wasteful. This shouldn't give the impression of superabundance, however, as much of that overproduction comes at the expense of soil health and habitat, essentially being a destructive process, mining nutrients from the ecosystem. Anyways, a lot is wasted during production, then sometimes more at harvest due to lack of labor, then a ton gets wasted in shipping, then even more is wasted at the stores, and in the home you should compost food waste, or even better, feed it to lactobacilli cultures. You can make a bokashi bucket for free out of trash. And we have to take into account that even what isn't wasted is being eaten beyond the natural need. A lot of people eat in excess of their caloric needs, especially in first world countries.
I feel like this is way more noticeable post-plague. Maybe it really affected people's ability to socialize, but I noticed even when I was in Chicago of all places, it had a strange sense of emptiness that kind of conflicts with the idea and image of a busy, bustling city. I know it's not New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, or other major metropolitan areas in the United States, but it feels kind of weird walking around in a city that feels almost deserted.
A tangential thought. On one hand, I feel like perhaps one of the only reasons quality of life is higher in the US than the UK is our firearms. Electricians, for example, earn nearly 3 times as much in the US. I feel that the UK has been able to systematically disenfranchise their middle class to a larger extent, because their ruling class doesn't fear an angry middle class. On the other hand, the population density of the Rust Belt is perfect for bicycling. However, the guns make it too dangerous to just randomly bike around. This comes to mind because of how shitty bike infrastructure is in Seattle. Far too few bike paths for the quantity of people that want to use them. 2 OP, you're in Europe. China and India don't think overpopulation is a myth. The way I see it, we have the resources to support 8 to 10 billion people, but the Earth isn't capable of supporting the waste of that many people long term. I live in a kind or low IQ area, and it's covered in garbage. People with an IQ of 90 or less seem to literally suffer difficulties with the concept of disposing of trash in receptacles. I do think that the way that overpopulation is presented by the media is just one of many tactics that the elite class is utilizing to deliberately discourage intelligent people from breeding, though.
It's because people are absolutely to goddammit stubborn and too fragile to admit that there are far too many domesticated cows on this planet. There are under 1 billion of them, and they require more calories than the 8 billion humans. They require more land to grow their food than all other animal agriculture combined. If we wiped out the cows, we could still eat pork, goat, chicken, rabbit, duck, etc., and produce an equal amount of weight in meat per year for half of the resource. Less water used, less fertilizer produced applied, less fuel used to harvest all these based beans and ship them halfway across the world. It's literally the biggest potential win-win of all time. But people want cheeseburgers so badly that they'd rather increase the local population density tenfold, refuse a drop in fuel price, and cover their eyes and contribute to ecological damage that just isn't worth it. Concerns about overpopulation fundamentally aren't saying there are too many people, it's about saying these gluttons will never ever learn or change or accept responsibility in any way. The least we can do is slow the hell down.
Has anyone else gotten an inkling recently that the world population is actually far lower than we are being led to believe? Oftentimes, when in an urban area, it looks as if many of the buildings are props or completely empty, and even many of the houses in my suburb never have any activity going around at them. I think they might be fake as well. Entire neighborhoods often seem to be desolate of life. Even the internet seems empty. What is going on?
The number of bodies is correct. If anything, the population is a bit higher than census data would show. The number of souls? It's much lower. At least where I live, there is a problem with entire neighborhoods being constructed. But even 5+ years later, there are only 2 or 3 families living there, whereas the rundown part of town is overcrowded. Same construction contracting company building the new neighborhoods. Where the hell are they getting the money if nobody is buying their new homes?
It's to destroy nature under the guise of building for a growing population. Go outside and look at how many buildings are just sitting there. Places that could have been gardens for actual residents of the area, instead of some LLC corporation taking up land they don't even step foot on.
It's because in a lot of first world countries, investors from overseas are allowed to buy these properties, and then they just sit on them so they will accrue value over time. The more they do this, the more valuable each property becomes. Then at some point when the price gets high enough, they rent them out at exorbitant rates and fuck over the people that actually live in that area. No one can buy a home because it's too expensive, and even when they can, they will be outbid. So everybody is forced to rent. Meanwhile, the fat cats are making absolute bank off the rent, and the value of all the properties just keeps going up and up and up and up. I've been stuck in my parents' house for almost 5 years because the cost of buying a home in my area has gone up 47%, one of the highest in the nation. And I'm not going to live in Section 8 housing with crack-dealing neighbors again. It's hell. At least they understand my situation. Across America, the average rent rose by 22%. It's insane. The government tells you inflation is 7%, but look at what the landlords are charging. That's the real cost of inflation right there. This needs to stop. If politicians weren't just pleasing their Wall Street pimps, they might actually pass a law that would stop investors from owning empty homes. Piece of shit government working for the elites. We should just start burning these houses down. Nobody lives in them anyway.
Pretty much this. If America got foreign speculative investors to fuck off, the housing market would crater. All the new papier-mâché cheap suburb homes are just speculation holdings rented out to locals. As California lost population, the prices of homes doubled in the last 2 years. Make sense? At some point there may be a reckoning. But for now, if things feel empty, it is because they truly are. People are very concentrated into cities, and the rest is far more sparse than you might expect, especially in areas where homes have been built in the last 15 years. World population is still rising, this is true, but in developed nations, populations are decimating themselves. Things are not what they seem. China has the most blatant fake and empty buildings. It's all just fake and empty.
What this guy said. You have been sold out to politicians who allow your living space to be sold to overseas investors. They do this so that their own investment properties go up in price as well. It's a way of artificially inflated the housing market, and the people involved should be tried for treason, strung up and hung from a pole. To add to this, I think there is a loophole to getting a free house, if you can find one of these empty investor homes. Squatters' rights are a thing. In most countries, if you move into one of these empty houses and live there for a certain amount of time, the house automatically becomes your property. All you have to do is move in and stay low for as long as possible. Document yourself living there. So when the time is up and your squatter's rights activate, you can show physical proof that you have been living in the house for 5 years or whatever, and no owner has ever came to claim the claim or remove you. The house is now yours. There are houses in Australia that now rightfully belong to squatters because they lived there for so long, and the original owners did nothing about it for so long. So get out there, find an empty home that belongs to some Chinese piece of shit investor, and start squatting, and take a photo of yourself inside the house, every day holding a newspaper to prove how long you've been living there.
What if the house is owned by the bank and not up for sale?
You should squat. See if your state requires you to pay property tax, though. If they do, then the bank will keep it. Some cases you have to prove you thought it was your property. So say you bought it from a realtor. Give them a fake name and everything. Fake some paperwork. In the US, you could own a property in as short as 5 years. You get screwed by the bank, so screw the bank.
Man, these laws are weird. At this rate, I might as well just piss on it and call it mine. I don't want to pay taxes.
Pretend you own it. Make some fake paperwork. A couple $100 a year in taxes is a hell of a lot better than rent.
My count was around 80 million at best. The population is dramatically overstated, like to ridiculous degrees. It is not government lying. It is our subconscious protecting the dream. The world is virtually empty. Most of the population is flesh golem NPC material, so it is even much worse than a lower population. You don't even live when you think you do, let alone where. There is almost nothing left of the world we were born into. This is just a sad imitation, cobbled together from the memories of something once real.
Census records can provide the building blocks of your research. The first federal population census was taken in 1790 and has been taken every 10 years since. Because of a 72-year restriction on access to the census, the most recent year available is 1940. The 1950 census will be released on April 1st, 2022. This tells you everything you need to know at first glance. The National Archives has the census schedules on microfilm available from 1790 to 1940, and most have now been digitized by our digitization partners. But then they say earlier records are available, so I don't know.
I have a gut feeling that they want to prevent people from actually living with or in nature, like roaming in a forest and growing fruit like those tribal men of the Amazon.
Your gut is right. They want us out of nature so they can control our mating rituals. There are so many kids in America today with their mental problems, cognitive/intellectual disabilities, diabetes, and just overall terrible genetics. Nature hasn't been able to cull the weak, and as a result, we have generations of people that aren't mentally or physically fit to handle the world. This is an attempt by an extraterrestrial entity to make the human population fat, helpless, and dependent, using the human elite as their emissaries. Their manipulation runs so deep that people choose this out of their own free will. The end goal is to siphon Earth of its resources, and in order to do that, you have to gatekeep all true knowledge and have us accustomed to living the way they do, inside and away from the elements. The natives in the Americas knew this truth. Since they passed along information orally, as did many other ancient cultures, they were genocide to keep this information from festering at some point in the future. Bringing the Protestants to America was done by design for that very purpose. Additionally, if we truly understood the spiritual foundation of our planet, there's no way we'd consume all this shit they feed us.
I spend most of the early part of the day by the river or out in nature. I find it simple to clear my mind, and when I do think, it is full of positive hope and ideas of goodness. My muscles relax and I find my pain issues going away, and I walk around barefoot, and it feels quite nice. Then I head back into town, and the closer I get, the worse I am at keeping positive. I feel the oppressing weight of some kind of aura, which is probably the energy of all the egos and chatter of so many people combining with mine, magnified by the crappy roadways and architecture to assault the senses. Natural colors like green and tan and blue, and sounds of birds and wind rustling is replaced with garbage and gray. I feel like some people can cope and they don't even seem to notice it. Maybe they are stronger or less aware. Maybe they function so low vibrationally that they don't even notice. This isn't just a rant about how crappy society is. It's here, and it seems to blow ass in comparison to what kinds of living is possible. But I want to know some ways I can protect myself from the aura of towns and cities. Is living around lots of people just inherently going to drive anyone slightly insane? It doesn't feel right to be stacked up on each other in such ways.
I'm not what people would consider a conspiracy theorist. I don't believe in the Illuminati. I don't care about Freemasons, and I don't see any good reason to believe the moon landing was faked. That said, it's obvious that there is an economic elite. Because of the necessity of trade deals, they are in continual contact with each other. The population is booming like never before. In record speed, we've jumped from 7 billion to 7.5 billion people. If I wanted to control the population, the most obvious way to do it would be to have them kill each other. To facilitate this, I'd create divisions between people based on religion, ideology, ethnicity, and geographic location. I'd create an intense sense of nationalism, and I'd create a narrative to justify state aggression. That is, they're terrorists, they're hedonists, they're human rights violators, they're leeches, they're imperialists, etc. I'd coordinate for the figureheads of each state to be showmen who would make a performance of brazenly insulting each other, to stoke patriotism at home and hatred abroad. I'd make loud but slow and gradual proclamations that we were getting closer to needing to use massive weapons like nuclear bombs. I'd do this so slowly that eventually, I'd be able to justify to some segment of the population that it was time to use them, and that we had no choice. Every time I used a weapon or started a war, even if it went badly, I'd say it was the cost of freedom.
There is no such thing as overpopulation, but an overconsumption. When I look at many people's views on overpopulation, they still hold on to the Malthusian dilemma. They think that the food increase is linear, and the increase in the number of births is exponential. This means that there are, or will be, too many people in comparison to the food that is available. But in reality, our planet can produce enough food for the number of people living on our Earth, and the people that are yet to be born. The growth of our population has little to no impact on climate change. It is the lifestyle that we as humans have created for ourselves that is causing the Earth to decay. The problem is that we consume too much, so the solution is not to have fewer children, but to have a redistribution. Having fewer children will lead to many negative consequences in the future, and is therefore anything but ethical. There will be a very high population of old people and a shortage of young people. The number of retirements will rise while the number of working people will fall. The working, younger people will therefore have to pay more and more taxes to finance the number of retired people. In addition, the elderly will need to have additional services, such as housing and all types of care, and these are also costs paid by the working people. The people who have to bear the burden of all these costs will have less money to spend, and that will inhibit economic growth. Because of all these consequences, these people will probably tend to limit the amount of children that they will be having, which will cause the trend to continue. Many older people, few young people.
Anyone who doesn't think overpopulation is possible needs to open their doors immediately and take in 200 migrants. They can sleep in your kitchen, on your sofa. Oh, you have spare closets. Your things can be moved out, they can stay in there too. Also, you have to feed and pay for all of them. Another 200 will arrive next week. What do you mean you don't have space for them? What do you mean you don't have the resources for them? You claimed they were both infinite.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.